Okay, so we have everyone. Okay,
yeah,
please.
Yeah, question. So you're talking, there's a very interesting tension in your presentation, in the sense that you want to make things more sustainable, more accountable, but so the model you're proposing doesn't seem to keep up with the food requirements, for example, that we're going to have. So how are you going to negotiate that tension? So the fact that we need more output, and are you promoting a non-intensive farming? How are you going to deal with that, and how blockchain can help?
Here.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm not sure if blockchain in the end will solve. It's because my direction is actually not solving efficiency, not to promote producing more, but to have a positive. And I hope that efficiency will come out as a side effect, if that answers your question.
So I'm departing from the book you gave me last year, and once I read it, there is the bath analogy.
Yeah.
Water in, water out.
Yeah.
How do you keep that level? Because we need to keep people going, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the idea is more fixing the system and measure it and see if it can be more efficient and have more outcome. At the moment, it's not sure. I just see a striking overlap between these two fields, right, and want to investigate into it.
So you're saying it's not necessarily efficiency on its own, it's efficiency in the right places.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So question to Claudia then, not a question. Claudia, I thought your presentation was amazing because you're not only solving the CDE problem for BEAM, but you're solving or proposing a solution for a CDE problem for the enterprise. How do you see your tool as something that also solves the problem of enterprise content management?
So in my prototype, it was like showing only like the basic idea how this could look for what I know is used, like the tools that we use. But of course, it could be extended. I think blockchain has capability to connect with all of the tools that we use. We could be connected with SAP as well, and KFM systems, and all of the things that are used in the enterprise. So that's, I think, the main strength of it, that we do not really develop a new tool. We just connect everything what exists there. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, maybe I have a question regarding this topic to connect maybe CDEs also for Turbi. So it's of course a challenge because you have existing systems. You showed us some vendors, some software companies, and so how do you think you can manage the accounts, that you can maybe identities, because I don't want to log in this system with another account and with different rights, and in general, you always have to access the data in the cloud, of course. And do you have any idea to solve this problem?
I mean, I think there are two ways to approach this, because like in one way we can say we keep the data still on the cloud, but if the vendors would comply with this idea, maybe they could just transfer all of the data to IPFS instead of the cloud. Then it would be much easier to connect to the tool. Like we could use the same public and private key to access the data. But if they don't comply and we have to always log in to these tools, yeah, it's more complicated. Like because we would have to like always log in when we go to the external tool. But at least in the tool you could see the previews. So maybe you don't always have to like really go back there. Like only if you really have to pull the data and open, I don't know, a Revit file, then you would have to log in. But I mean, I guess people are doing this like every day, so they probably have like, you know, saved their credentials and it's like one click. So it shouldn't be too much of an issue. But it's, yeah, it's like the main point to think about, I think, like how the permissions are connected, because we have a permission to this blockchain tool and then we have permission levels to all of the other tools. So like how are they overlapping or not overlapping? That's, yeah, something to think about. So thank you.
Maybe a further question about what you store on the blockchain, because it's always a discussion which data you want to store, and is this personal data, and there's a right that you can delete personal data, but however you cannot change the blockchain anymore. So also here it's really hard. So I think at least in Europe it's always a discussion, can I really use the blockchain, because I always store some information about users and dates and something like this. So how make it in a way that it's so align with our regulations. So it's do you have also the experience from your survey, and when you're talking with externals, that they are always thinking about, oh, maybe I store now personal data on the blockchain?
I mean, they don't have experience. I think nobody has experience with this yet. But yeah, some of them were concerned, like if you really want to save sensitive data on the block, like especially on the public blockchain. If we use a private blockchain, I think it's not such a big issue. But if we use the public blockchain, I think the solution is just to encrypt the data so that it's not like really storing the data that is visible, but it's rather, a piece of code, hashed information, so that not everybody can understand what is really stored there. Yeah.
How about questions to the two speakers online? So any questions?
Okay, I got some questions. Actually, all the 4 presentations are excellent. We can see the brilliant applications of blockchain from our young generation. I just have 2 questions. One is still for Claudia. Right? Okay. So your way to visualize the transaction cost is really nice, and that's brilliant. So, but nowadays for CDE, there are different ways, like log files, to record the transaction history anyway. So I must have missed something. So what's the point to add a blockchain layer?
I think the main advantage is that it is immutable and tamper-proof, because like right now we have those other CDEs that are like well adopted, everybody's using them, but that is the problem. Like people are afraid to share their data with other stakeholders. That's why they have their own CDE. And with the blockchain, like, the data is decentralized and it's distributed, and everybody has kind of control over their own data. So this would lead to providing more trust, and people should be less scared to share the data with the others.
That is more like another CDE to contain the transaction history.
It's like it's like a record of all of the transactions happening in other CDEs, so that we have this kind of one place where everything is recorded and it's not possible to change. Because in the CDEs, like in case of a dispute, somebody can just, reject the access to the other people, so then they cannot do anything anymore. And when they would have blockchain, this would not be possible.
Nice idea. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. But some supplement, because I think CDE actually should have audit trail as well. So the audit trail basically is a record of all the changes, etc. So just that how the audit trail will be blockchain, or how is it linked to blockchain? Yeah. So can we have at least one question to each of them?
Yes, I have a question.
So
Jack.
Hajaji and also Dr. Tao.
Yeah, I have a question for Amma Hizachi. So you also mentioned some very good points during your presentation. A point I particularly like is you say that project owners or users probably may not fully aware the existence of their blockchain system. That is true. Okay, most of the users, clients don't know the blockchain system. My question is, do you have any experience? So how to make them to pay something that they are not fully aware of?
Yeah, that's a good question. And maybe I will answer this question from the perspective of the previous question. Actually, in fact, regarding, I start with the industry, like to ask them what the data that they want. So actually, we clarify the data between like what the data should be reliable, okay, and should be within the common data environment, and what the data actually, it is responsible to be delivered, but does not need actually to be within the data environment. And from actually that discussion, we start explaining to them that blockchain, as I mentioned, it's a passive technology, which means, okay, it's like work, within the foundation layer of any other technology. So in fact, will not disrupt, how they are working between each other, but instead will change the supplier and subcontractor instead of exchange files to extend data. But we had massive question, like especially when it comes to the supplier and subcontractor, some of them, they don't have the actual education to deal with such technology. But in fact, they don't need that, because they will just deal with the front page of that technology. But what they need, to be able to actually just insert the data, which is what smart contract will change, from being just send millions of files, which is no one read, and instead of start actually now sending a data that it will be immutable, and at the same time accountable. And that's actually aligned with your question, the previous question about what type of data that we need. Either if you are in Europe or not Europe, the question should back to the concept of, is this data to ensure the reliability or to ensure the responsibility? And if it's reliability, it should be within the common data, within the blockchain database. If it's actually ensure the responsibility, that data does not need to be on chain and can be actually off chain. And maybe if you allow me, I will actually just send you like the last paper where actually we have discussed that in more details. But thank you for the question. It's a good question.
Okay, so any question to Xinyu? Yeah, thanks, Emma. So any question to Xinyu? I admit that I actually steal some of his presentation slide.
Maybe I have one question, of course, Toby. It's about your checking. So it's really quite nice that you try to extract some rules from the documents. Of course, I think at the moment maybe the checking rules are straightforward. So do you think it's also possible to extract additional checking rules, for example, that you have other standards you have to fulfill before you maybe, it's more a little bit goes into detail, not very formal, it's more about design and structural analysis, that you check something before you can upload it. It's also possible to bring this into a smart contract?
Yes, very good suggestion actually. So in this initial exploration, we only use the ISO standards as initial exploration. But yes, in real design phase or construction phase, we also need to refer some other standards, even some internal standards or regulations by the design team or construction team. So yes, so the contribution of this work is just to propose such methods that we can use the logic graph to extract the rules from different standards and another new architecture to integrate these rules with the smart contract to perform the compliance checking. So yeah, the resources should be various resources could be.
So do you think it's possible, as you're talking about compliance checking, that's more or less what I also meant, so because there's missing some kind of a language for that. So do you think maybe the smart contract language is maybe, or the smart contract is a language to represent in a more transparent way these compliance checking rules? Because at the moment everything is fixed coded in a certain software, maybe like Solibri or whatever.
It is actually possible because but before we can put these rules in smart contract, we need to do some minor conversion from the plain text to the language that can be understood by smart contract using a Go language, Python, Java, or Solidity, like you mentioned. So this convention, this conversion is something we are trying to do actually. Yeah. But it is possible.
Okay, so according to the schedule, we have only 14 minutes for the lunch. So, any burning question? If no, then maybe we wrap up this session. Okay, thanks again.